Hey everybody, this is Cody from your CEI 511 course. This is part 2 of our discussion about our modern communications research project. My project, if you didn't see the first video, is going to be on smartphone use. I want to focus more on education, but I also want to talk about just general smartphone use when it comes to adolescence and generally in society. I feel that this is a really important topic to cover because most students that I have smartphones and they have them with them in school. My school actually has it banned where students are supposed to put their phones in their locker when they come into school. Most of the time that doesn't happen, but that is the school rule. So it's pretty interesting just to talk about how smartphones could be used in education. Obviously, there's going to be pros and cons to that. And that's what I want to talk about in this project or research assignment. Talking about the pros and cons and impacts for teachers too, because teachers can also use the smartphones to their advantage, and it could also be a hindrance on them as well. So, some directed questions I had looking at this project. How much are we really using smartphones? It's going to be geared more towards adolescents. What are we using smartphones for? So, we know that they can do almost anything a computer can do. What are we using them for? What can they be used for? What are the positive and negative impacts smartphones are having on the classroom? What are some other impacts they might be having on adolescents, both positives and negatives? What might the future smartphone look like? What might the classroom look like with smartphones using virtual reality? While I was just talking about these directed questions, I want to go over how much are we really using smartphones. I found this one to be quite staggering if you actually look at some of these numbers here. So, for smartphones, 73% of adolescents, teenagers, have smartphones, and then also 91% of those are using them daily to text message and use them for other things like social media every day. So those are pretty high numbers. So, some key topics I wanted to go over during this is general smartphone usage in education. So, we'll talk about that. Pros and cons to using them in the classroom. Here are just some general highlighted ideas I want to talk about for pros and some general ones for cons. And then also the impact on adolescence. One of the main things I want to talk about with that is addiction. I feel that kids are addicted to these phones. Whenever you tell them put it away, they start freaking out, or if they need to check it constantly, obviously it is an addiction. So, next I have some general resources. So, I organized it into 3 different categories. I have some general information. Some of them go over both pros and cons and general information about smartphones and smartphone usage. Then we also have it in the 2 other categories of being both pros and cons. So, I just want to go over maybe like 3 of these resources, some of the best ones I found. If you are looking for some general, even if you're not looking for smartphones, Pew Research Center has some really great articles. I think that's this one here. Yep. So Pew Research Center has some really great articles I found. They're really in depth. They have a lot of good graphics, and they go over all the topics in depth. So I've used it Pew Research Center a few times in other classes. So it's pretty good to look at what they have. Their articles are very good. I'm not going to bore you by going through this whole one here. It goes on for a little bit. Another really good one is NEA Today, which is National Educators Association. Their articles are really good. It's more based from like the teaching standpoint, but they have both for this topic articles that are both for and against using smartphones in the classroom. So I really liked looking at it that way from the teacher standpoint about why smartphones in the classroom could be good or bad. This one's about classroom management and how if we're using smartphones in the classroom, we could actually be feeding their addiction, well, students' addiction to smartphones and social media and just technology in general. Then they also have ones that are going to say all these great things you can do in a classroom using a smartphone. Another one I want to show you real quick is NBC Today had this article here that went over 5 really good reasons you should be using a smartphone in a classroom, such as using it to take notes. So you can take pictures of your whiteboard. You could take pictures of things that are written on the board. You can also use it for taking notes. You could take videos of a lesson. You could keep your notes on your phone so you have it with you at all times. That way you could not lose them. Also, for students that might have very sloppy handwriting, it would be neater for them to type it out. So this is just a quick overview of what I would like to cover in my project for the modern communications research. Once again, it is on smartphones and their use in schools.